promising a future that she could see with crystal clarity. But then, that sense of joy might have had more to do with the young man who held out his hand to her on the landing. They stopped outside the fourth door to the left, and as Lise watched him jiggle the key in its rusted lock, her mind narrowed in on one single giddying thought. He's going to propose! Uli Neumann is going to propose! The door gave way with a groan, and Uli turned with a smile. Remind me to bring some oil for the hinges, he said. Watch that floorboard, it's a little loose. Lise stepped inside, craning her neck to admire the faded wallpaper that crept up to curlicute plaster trim. It doesn't look like much, I know, Uli continued with a shrug of his narrow shoulders, but with some new paint and furniture, a television perhaps. He grinned and ran a hand through his dark hair. Just tell me you don't hate it. That's all I ask. Hate it? Like so many of the remaining Mietkäsener apartment blocks in Berlin, this one had survived the devastation of the war on luck alone. And it was luck that Lise chose to see in the apartment. Luck, rather than the hard work that she and Uli would have in bringing the place up to standard. To the right of the modest entrance hall was a kitchenette, the cupboards painted a cheery shade of eggshell blue. A slapdash conversion, Lise suspected, of what had once been half a bedroom. She opened the door closest to the entrance, what she had assumed to be a hall closet, to reveal a bathroom, and smiled, her suspicions confirmed. She continued down the hall, averting her eyes from the bedrooms opposite the kitchenette with a sudden absurd attack of modesty. What was there to be modest about, when this apartment was a declaration of the commitment she and Uli had expressed to each other in everything but words? I love it, she said finally, meeting Uli in the sitting room at the end of the hall. She smiled as he fussed over the placement of second-hand furniture around the fireplace and pictured the room as it would be when she and Uli were finished with it, with colourful, fresh wallpaper and a new living room set from KaDeWe department store, porcelain mugs hung from the painted trim of the kitchenette's pass-through window. She thought of Uli, mixing drinks for their guests from a bar cart while she checked on the progress of a roast dinner, the sound of a baby screeching in its bassinet. He finished nudging the ottoman in place and looked up. You're not just saying that, are you? You wouldn't prefer some impossibly expensive new build near the Kudamm with functional plumbing? Functional plumbing would be a draw, Lise replied lightly, pulling aside the dusty curtains to flood the room with sunlight. But no, this is ours. It feels like us. I was hoping you'd say that. He stepped forward to wrap Lise in his arms, and she allowed herself to fall into his kiss. Would she ever tire of Uli's irrepressible optimism? The brightness in Uli's soul seemed purpose-built to illuminate the darkness in Lise's own, drawing her out of her tendency toward gloom and bringing her willingly toward joy. Uli pulled back, his grey eyes sparkling behind the glass of his horn-rimmed spectacles. Tall and slender, with rounded shoulders and a mess of dark hair that looked as if it had never made the acquaintance of a hairbrush, Uli resembled, to Lise's mind, Buddy Holly, but for the deeply scored laugh lines that gave rare distinction to his wide smile. He led her to the window, nestling his chin in the hollow of her collarbone, as they looked out onto bustling Bernauer Strasse. Below, cars and trucks trundled along the rain-soaked street as people wandered the sidewalk in groups of twos and threes, occasionally disappearing beneath the leafy canopy of slender saplings before reappearing further down the pavement. From here, she could see past the parquet on the opposite side of the road, where green-clad Grenztruppen patrolled their rigid routes, past the bombed-out remains of several apartment buildings on Schönholzer Strasse, and into the darkened, postage-stamp window of her family's apartment on the top floor of 56 Rheinsberger Strasse. I know how hard it's been for you to think about leaving, Uli said, his breath warm on her cheek. I hope that, by being only a few streets away, you won't feel you have to choose. She stared at the windows of her family apartment, picturing her father, Rudolph, as he'd been that morning, leafing through a medical reference book in the living room, Powell finishing a coffee before reporting for his shift at the police station. Between Rheinsberger Strasse and the centre of Bernauer Strasse ran the invisible divide between East